LSU and Auburn. Auburn is coming to Death Valley, 7 Eastern, ESPN. LSU favored by 11.5. LSU is rolling right now. They're rolling right now offensively. You had the setback against Ole Miss. I understand that, but the way that they responded against Missouri gave me a lot of confidence for the way that they are trending. Now, understand that offense is a big reason why they are playing the way they are. And even the game against Ole Miss, the offense played well enough to win. The defense is the major concern. So my question is now you've had 2 games where one was a letdown spot for you. I don't know if letdown spot's the right word to use. You had one game where you lost, so kind of knocked you back a little bit. You respond well against Missouri. You go on the road and you have a close game where it takes a pick 6 to kind of put you over the edge there. And they wanted Major Burns to get down, but he didn't, so it is what it is. But like for LSU, how do you handle success now? How do you handle those 2 emotional games in a row? Because a mature team is going to say, no problem, hit the reset button, come back to Death Valley at night, play a sneaky Auburn team, handle business. That's what a mature football team would do. Now, a football team that isn't necessarily at that point competitively would have a letdown here, would say, well, we had 2 really difficult, emotionally charged games. Where are we at? I'm excited to see how they respond. For Auburn, the beautiful part about this game, the beautiful part about this season for Auburn, outside looking in, it's all house money. Like even that game against Georgia, if Auburn had lost by 3 touchdowns, nobody would have batted an eye. Nobody would have questioned, is Hugh the guy? Like there would have been none of that. But the beautiful part now for Auburn, as they have continued to trend in a positive direction, especially from that game against Georgia, we're starting to kind of understand where this thing is headed. So they looked night and day different against Georgia. They had the bye week last week. I'm curious to see how much from that Georgia game, confidence-wise, carries over to this LSU game. Because Jordan-Hare was where they play Georgia. They play LSU out on the road. Like that's a tough place to play. We all understand that. I think they have a lot of momentum right now with that game behind them. And I think that Hugh Freeze has Auburn in a place where they're more competitive than people want to give them credit for, to be real. They're going to scheme it up. They will dial it up, I promise you. And if they want to be taken more seriously, if Auburn wants to make a statement, let everybody know where this thing is headed, you go beat the SEC West champs from last year. That's on the table now for Auburn. How do they handle that? How do they respond to that? This game is going to tell us a lot. So we'll break it down right now for you. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following us right here. Also on the socials, on Twitter, on Instagram, at JD Pickell. But this show right now is live 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Want you dialed in so you don't miss a minute of it. We appreciate you in advance for that. Now, the big thing I'm watching here, schematically, is Harold Perkins, everything linebacker for LSU from a season ago, against the mobile quarterback play of Auburn. You got Peyton Thorne, you got Robbie Ashford. Both did some damage now against Georgia last week. I guess 2 weeks ago, the last time Auburn played. And they did it in a read option kind of format. It wasn't just Robbie Ashford and his packages he got at times. It was Peyton Thorne as well, ripping off big gains and breaking contain against Georgia and the way that they blocked that up. Now, the reason why I mentioned Harold Perkins is we're still kind of waiting for Harold Perkins to sort of flex the muscle we saw from last year where he was just causing havoc. He was all over the field. And I understand a lot of that, too, is the way that he's being played at LSU. And some of that might be a Harold Perkins decision. Some of that might be a coaching decision. Regardless, they've played him more at inside linebacker. I think this is the game where Harold Perkins has to make a statement. Because the last couple of times that LSU played mobile quarterbacks a season ago, whether it was Bryce Young, whether it was Malik Hornsby at Arkansas, whether it was Jackson Dart, like Harold Perkins was the answer to that. For Auburn, this is the answer for them in terms of offensive production. Is they want to run the quarterback, they want to get you off balance, they want to get you running this way and that way, break, contain, and when you want to try and key on the quarterback, they'll give it to Jarquez Hunter around the edge. Like that's kind of the formula for Auburn. So if Harold Perkins can be that version of what we saw last year against mobile quarterbacks, that's going to limit Auburn tremendously. And that's going to cause them to have issues offensively. And you don't want to have issues offensively against this LSU offense because they will score points in bunches. Like, you cannot spot this LSU offense 10 meters in a track meet because you're not catching them. You're not catching them. So that's the reality. Now, if Auburn's able to have success doing that, something to watch for is the tempo at which Auburn plays. Because if I'm Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery, I say, okay, if we're having success running the football, let's take as much time off that clock as possible. Let's do the opposite of what I was just referring to. Let's limit the number of possessions that LSU gets, make this thing low scoring, try and take the crowd out of it, make it ugly, make it messy, and we'll get out of here with a dub. That would be a potential situation. I'm not saying this matchup 100% equates one way or the other, but it definitely has a big impact on the tempo of this game, and I'm curious to see how that ends up shaking out for either side. Now, the other thing I want to watch here is Jayden Daniels, quarterback for LSU, getting some Heisman love, deservedly so. He has been balling, been throwing the ball all around the yard, dealing the pill like a shady pharmacist, for those of y'all that are friends of the show. Jayden Daniels handling the pressure of this Ron Roberts defense. Now, Ron Roberts, defensive coordinator for Auburn, they are going to dial it up. Okay, they are going to make sure they get after number 5. Now, the thing with pressure is a little bit curious because it's kind of a high-risk, high-reward scenario for you. The reward is if you get home and you're able to force him off his game. Like, at best, maybe you force some negative plays if you're Auburn, or excuse me, if you're LSU. Now, at worst, if you're LSU, and at best, if you're Auburn, you force some turnovers. You force extra possessions for your defense. You force Jayden Daniels to have to watch a portion of this game because it goes back to the Auburn offense. So that would be obviously a more extreme scenario. But if they don't get home, you leave yourself a little bit more exposed because anytime you're applying pressure, typically you're bringing a linebacker or a safety or any number of positions, I suppose. And when you do that, there's probably some real estate behind wherever that blitz is coming from. And I understand that there's an assignment for whoever position to fill wherever that pressure was coming from. There's supposed to be an answer on the back end of it, but for that split second, if you're a step ahead as Jayden Daniels in this LSU offense of where that pressure's coming from, you diagnose it quickly, you get the ball out in a hurry. There are some playmakers for LSU that will make Auburn pay. Also, if you're going to do pressure, you probably have a one-on-one matchup somewhere else across the board here, whether it's Malik Neighbors, whether it's Brian Thomas. Somebody's going to get theirs. So keep an eye on that. How Jayden Daniels handles that will be a very, very big variable in terms of how this game plays itself out. Now, when it comes to the non-negotiables in this game for Auburn, we got to talk about those. Because anytime the spread is a double-digit spread, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you, hey, LSU, they've got some things they like in this football game. No duh. Vegas knows that. That's why they have them at 11.5 favorites. The non-negotiables for me when it comes to Auburn, they need to, one, take away some part of LSU's offense, just limit them in some way, shape, or form. Ideally, it would be the running game. Now, it's a big task, but if you can limit the running game in an honest fashion, meaning you don't have to bring consistent pressure to stop Logan Diggs or stop Jayden Daniels, and you can just play really assignment-sound football against LSU, you get more attention on the back end, and you don't have to play quite as much man coverage with a Brian Thomas or a Malik Neighbors or a Mason Taylor or whoever it ends up being. So being able to have more resources dedicated to the pass game is predicated on having enough with the honest look that you have defensively up front, if that makes sense. We don't want to cheat if we're Auburn. We have to play them honest up front and make sure we don't give up that big play on the back end. That would be a world you would want to live in. So limiting the run game is non-negotiable number one. Other part of that, we've talked about it a few times already. I think there has to be extra ammo somewhere in the chamber here for Auburn. And when I say extra ammo, you got to find a way to have more possessions than LSU. And that's not an uncommon non-negotiable for us when it comes to a situation like this where a team's a double-digit dog on the road. But, like, if I'm Hugh Freeze and I'm Philip Montgomery, let's throw the kitchen sink out there, baby. Like, house money. Nobody's defining Auburn from this game if they lose. Let's go for the onside kick, surprise onside to start the second half. Let's do the fake punt. Let's go for two. Let's do the fake field goal, all those things. Like, there needs to be some way, shape, or form where Auburn is able to get an extra possession. And, I mean, maybe that's the defensive side of things. Maybe that is going back to the Ron Roberts aggressive style of play and getting a turnover and forcing Jayden Daniels into throwing a bad interception or into a strip sack, whatever it ends up being. There has to be more bullets for Auburn than what LSU gets offensively. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, when it comes to this game, though, here's my deal. Like, I have a very difficult time watching LSU offensively these last 2 weeks and then seeing them come back home to Death Valley, and not a Death Valley day game, Death Valley at night, and saying, yep, they're going to kind of slow down. I see LSU offensively continuing to ramp up, I like Auburn long-term. I like what Hugh Freeze is doing there. I even think they give him a pretty good showing offensively, does Auburn. I don't think that LSU just fixes all their problems defensively this week. I think Auburn and Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery dial it up in a very big way. But even with that being said, I don't think you can keep pace with what Mike Denbrock and Jayden Daniels in this offense are doing right now. So we like LSU to win. I would not touch the spread, to be real with y'all. LSU defense gives me too much concern to touch this spread. So I would go with LSU. Final score, I'll pick it 41-28. But again, touch that spread at your own risk. If we like that final score, I'm not touching the spread. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.